has gone before. Welcome to the program. I am Augusto Perez, and shalom. And we are very pleased today to have with us Gill Broussard. And we interviewed Gill some time back. We were one of the first ones, if I remember correctly, to interview Gill, and his presentation was really, really very interesting. A lot of our viewers were very, very interested in it. So I was just praying. I was just thinking about things, and I just thought that, you know what, it's time to have Gill back. So welcome back, Gill.
Thank you, Augusta. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And of course, we have shared with you the background, Gill Broussard's background. He's an amateur astronomer, researcher. He's written a book, and you might want to share a little bit about that. And then we also have Larry Taylor with us, and he will be helping us to co-host this radio program. And we have, of course, with us Chuck, our producer, Chuck Wilson, from the real cold state of Alaska. And so let's give it a whirl. And now it's been a while since you were with us, Gill, and a lot has happened. But can you tell us a little bit of what's been going on since the last time you were with us?
Well, we've seen a lot of changes in the weather patterns and the magnetic north of Earth and quite a few other things. And I think the global government in general are getting closer and closer to preparations for this arrival of a planet eventually. Because, like I said earlier in some of our interviews, I started off as a hardened skeptic whether or not this planet actually existed. There is enough scientific information to point to a valid planet that has interfered in the past with Earth's history here.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, of course, a lot of people don't believe in Planet X. They don't think it's real. And the reason being because they can't see it with their naked eyes. Although there have been many that have seen it with their naked eyes in different parts of the world. But, you know, sometimes you just can't see it. And if you don't have the right equipment, if you don't have filters, the glare from the sun will just make it almost impossible to see it because of its close proximity to the sun. And
it's nowhere near the sun yet. That's something that YouTubers have jumped on and everything to try to maintain interest in the planet itself. What they are trying to promote is hits on their channel, but it's not there. It's not by the sun yet. Okay, it's if it would be, you'd have like a 40-day warning. It doesn't. That's not the way orbital mechanics works. It just doesn't sit there hiding behind the sun or like near it. The data clearly points to an object coming out of Sagittarius, and it's still there. It hasn't come into our inner orbit near the sun. It would only be near the sun if it would be maybe around this time period, maybe December, but you wouldn't be able to see it. It's still too far away. We've had plenty of time to look for it with a telescope. But in general, the best answer to that is that the government has the ability to cloak objects. I posted a video that shows how they're able to cloak things in the laboratory, whether the U.S. government section, military section, is about 30 to 40 years ahead of that. So they had that type of technology in the laboratory 30 to 40 years ago. So would they have the capabilities of cloaking it? Without a doubt. Especially if you go back and listen to Ronald Reagan's speech to the UN. He put the Star Wars up there. He was, remember how he said, if we put our, if we had an outside threat, posing a threat to the world, that we put our differences aside. And everyone thought that he was talking about aliens. No, the threat is this planet. Just go back and listen to what he's saying again. And this is where your Star Wars came into play. And lasers are used to cloak objects. So until it gets much closer, but there's more than one way to figure out whether or not we have a threat or a planet. Recently in California, there was a forest fire. It was over the hills. You couldn't see the flames. You could see the smoke. You could feel the heat. And by the time you saw the flames, it was too late because the winds were carrying it so quickly to the homes, they didn't have time to react. That's about the best description we have on this planet right now. You may not see it, but we can see the effects from it. The heat and the flame, the heat and the smoke, it tells us in astronomy terms, we have a problem.
So basically from what you're saying is these people, okay, the kings of the earth, the powers that be, the elite, the deep state, however people want to call them, they're using lasers to hide this object. Are they using this laser then, Gill, in conjunction with the chemtrails that they are spraying all over the country and other parts of the world? Is that basically one of the reasons for this chemtrailing, so that they can then use their lasers and other equipment, technology to cover some of these things?
Well, the lasers are not land-based, the ones that they're using for clothing. They're space-based. That's your Star Wars system that they put up. All right. Plus, these lasers can do multiple things. They can shoot down ICBM missiles. They can zap a target on the ground. It can do holograms, but they can also cloak an object. That's their main purpose. We have a $300 trillion global economy. So is it worth to put a few $100 billion up there in satellites to better hide it, not all the way, but till the last year of its approach? Because they can't hide it. They have to make it start appearing. We have too many anomalies in space. The perturbation of planets, tilting of of some of the axis of the planets, even Earth, the phenomenon with the sun, the problems with our weather. There's only one common denominator that global warming doesn't explain any of this. Global warming does not change the weather patterns on Mars and all of the planets. All of the planets are heating up. The orbits are warped on some of our studies that show this. The orbits of comets and asteroids are warped. Global warming doesn't do that. Global warming doesn't change the tilt of the Earth or our magnetic north. These are phenomena dealing with an object in space. And this is clear when you study white paper reports. I'm not talking about internet YouTubers. I'm talking about actual scientific white paper reports. There is enough data. And there's 88 constellations viewed from Earth. All of the white paper reports and the data is firmly pointing to Sagittarius. That happens to be south of the universe. South of the universe is not polar south. Okay, that's called Nadar. Polar north is called zenith in white paper reports. The universe south is towards Sagittarius on the ecliptic. And that's where all white paper report studies showing perturbations, warped orbits of comets, asteroids. This is the same place where NASA sent the Pioneer and Voyager probes looking for Planet X. You can go back and look at these articles. They went silent after 1993. And guess what? They made instrument contact then. And so that's why they went silent. But you read all the articles before that. It tells you clearly what they're looking for. But they thought it had a normal circular, elliptical orbit around the sun. Yeah, it has an elliptical orbit, all right, but it's more like a comet or an asteroid. It crosses all our planets. It comes into our inner solar system, rounds the sun, and backs out. And it roughly has around a 360-year orbit, not a 3,600-year orbit. We can go back in history and plot multiple times Even when we go with the ice core samples, looking at severe weather changes like the mini ice age or the Mulder effect, all of these other ones. When this planet starts coming in, it affects our sun. Happens to be the same timing with the entry and exit. When we plot the aphelium and perihelium of the orbit, furthest distance and closest distance to the sun, we have something like a 85 to 90% match with the seasonal extremes that are shown on Earth's history in ice core samples. That's not an accident. You don't have these type of lineups with it being an accident.
Now, is this object then, and you did mention that it is coming from Sagittarius, but for those of us that are less astronomically studied, and we know, of course, the constellation Sagittarius, and you mentioned it is located as we look towards the southern hemisphere, in that direction, anyways. But as far as our inner solar system, has Planet X entered our Earth's inner solar system already, or it still hasn't entered? I know we've been, a lot of people have been talking about that for years now, that it was getting close, and then even some said it has already entered into our solar system. And the other thing I have researched, Gill, and I would like to hear your take on this, is that when it comes into our solar system and it crosses our solar system, and then in an elliptical orbit, it crosses around the area between Mars and Jupiter, where the asteroid belt is located presently. Is that a myth? Is that there's some truth to that? Can you speak to that a bit?
Well, yes, it does come in. It goes all the way and crosses behind our sun and then exit out. It gets very close to the orbit of Mercury, okay, as it's making its round around the sun. It's just on the outside of Mercury, from what I can estimate at the moment. And we need a little bit more exact data. But the computer models showing us an exit and entry of 152 and 1/8 day of crossing Earth orbit twice. It's on Earth's planetary plane. Therefore, the entry and exit is on the ecliptic. You can look this up where the ecliptic is. It's the center line through the 12 signs that many people know as the zodiac. Okay, so in Hebrew that would have been called the Mezarah. It does cross through the debris field of a planet that used to exist between Mars and Jupiter. That we have a remnant of that planet we call Ceres. That was kind of the inner core that is still, I think it's a little bit smaller than our moon. And now it's a massive debris field. There used to be a planet there. This planet collided with Ceres, destroying it, shattering it. It slowed the planet down to 1/20th its normal speed. And then that's where the exodus occurred, where we had 3 days of darkness. Remember in Yeshua's time when he was on the cross, there was 3 hours of darkness. Remember, the moon's on the wrong side of Earth for Passover to have a solar eclipse. And we have historical documents outside the Bible that says both the sun and the moon were darkened. Okay, that means there's a third object. And it has to be larger. The moon can only give you 7.3 minutes of darkness. How do you get 3 hours? Except for another larger object that gives you 3 hours. But for that same object to give you 3 days of darkness during the exodus, it had to have been traveling to like 1/20th of its normal speed. Well, guess what? How do we confirm that in a model? But when we put this in the model and we look at it carefully, we can tell, just like when NASA would send probes out and it would start to lose their speed, they would take probe and they would let it pass close to the planet and it'd orbit it maybe 3 or 4 times. Then it would pick up its maximum speed because it's kind of like a slingshot effect. And then they dart it off to the next planet because it met its maximum speed. Well, this is exactly what we see that took place in the biblical records. It had slowed down to 1/20th. Now as it goes around the sun, it picks up a little bit of speed, but it takes 4 more trips before it reaches its normal speed again because of its mass. The mass allows it only to reach X distance and X speed. So right after the Exodus, it came back within 55 years. That meant it just took a small trip out into space and it came back. It came back for Joshua's long day. This is the object that caused the Earth's rotation to slow down by 12 hours and caused a meteor shower that took out his enemy. Then it came at 121 years, which was Job, which was within 7 years of Ruth, the drought of Ruth. Remember, it was 10 years of drought. Then it took 297 years before it came to David and Saul. David and Saul mixed together had a drought of 7 years. This object passes mid of the drought. Then it took 358 years before it went to Hezekiah. And this is where the shadow went backwards on steps, not a sundown. Well, this is the exact sequence that would mirror, just like NASA would when they put a satellite probe gaining speed around a planet. It gains additional speed each pass to about 3 to 4 times. After that, it meets the maximum speed. We have this recorded. Along with the other events of Earth axis tilting, the meteor showers, Earth slowing down on it, the 7 years of drought or 10 years, like in Ruth, and many of the plagues that's listed in the Exodus.
I was just going to say, Gill, if I may just interject something here. You know, I've been praying about this, thinking about it for a long time. I mean, this has been going on since the 1990s, and there have been different people, different theories. Of course, you're familiar with the other theory of the 3,600 years, and there's other theories even that there's an object that comes every 1,000 years. And I've been thinking about all this for a long time, praying and asking the Lord to show me. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, could there be a possibility, and it's certainly possible, that we are dealing with multiple objects out there, celestial objects, Planet X, others have talked about a Planet 9. Scientists recently have mentioned that there are multiple brown dwarfs that they have seen and detected in outer space, not just one, but many of them. It could be possible that also some of these brown dwarfs and celestial objects do make a pass through our solar system. Some may come through maybe 1,000 years. This object, Planet 7X, comes every 360 years, and there's others that come maybe longer orbits, multiple 1,000 years. Do you think that is a possibility?
Knowing orbital mechanics and basic astronomy and stuff rules out many of these. Number one, the Planet 9 that they found is like 23 times further than Neptune. That's 700 astronomical units. Okay? That's more than 3,600 years. Okay? That's way, way out there. Two, the orbital path that they're projecting doesn't even come inside Neptune's orbit, much less any of our other planets. It's circling our solar system in an elliptical orbit. Even in its closest path would be very difficult to see. Very difficult to see. All right? These other objects that they found, these deep, these Oort cloud objects, most of these protoplanets are smaller than our moon, and none of those really cross any. None of those are a threat to Earth. The problem that I have with this one that we're looking at, we have clear records throughout history. We have a model that works with the 360. Everything, we have clear data, and we have a real object that is a possible, I don't want to use the threat,